This is Chapter 38 of Ground Zero by Alan Gratz. The title of this chapter is Ground Zero. Reshmina picked up another rock and tossed it off the pile that used to be her home. The sun had almost set on September 11th, 2019, and she and Baba were still digging through the rubble, trying to find anything of value, anything that could help them survive. The digging was slow and hard, and all Reshmina had to show for her labor so far was one torn sleeping mat and one crushed metal pot. The work was even harder for her father, but he rolled rocks off the pile with determined patience. The rest of her family was down in the valley, Mora and Marzia making camp while Anna watched Zaire. They were going to have to spend at least one night without a roof over their heads, probably many more. The American soldiers had stayed, calling in Afghan National Army forces to help them secure the area. Now a team of Americans was meeting with each of the families who had lost their homes and their possessions, arranging for financial compensation for their losses. Taz had left to receive proper medical treatment for his wounds, but he was back now. Reshmina could see him climbing the hill toward where she and her father worked. Taz was clean and bandaged and had put on a new uniform, and he carried something over his shoulder. Reshmina kept her head down and kept moving rocks until Taz was standing right next to her. "Can I help?" Taz asked. Reshmina didn't look at him. "I brought blankets," Taz added. He held out a large duffel bag. "Food, a portable stove." "Thank you," Reshmina said at last. Baba nodded to him, and Taz set the bag down and started to help them clear the debris. He had a new rifle on a strap across his back, and when he bent over to move a rock, the rifle slid down in his way. "I hear some of the villagers are packing up and leaving for Pakistan," Taz said. It was true. Half the village had already collected their payments from the U.S. Army and set off before dark. Taz pushed his rifle out of the way again and hefted a rock. "Are you and your family going to go with them?" "No," Reshmina told him. "My family has decided to stay here, to rebuild." You sound like you don't want to do that." "Why should we?" Reshmina asked. "Our home will just be destroyed again, if not by you, then by the next country that invades." "But there is no future for me in Pakistan either." Reshmina sat back to take a breath and catch her breath. "Did you rebuild your fallen towers?" "The World Trade Center?" Taz asked. "Yes and no. They built one new giant skyscraper at Ground Zero instead." "Ground Zero?" Reshmina asked. She knew what those words meant, but not together. Taz stood and pushed his rifle around to his back again. "Ground Zero is like the place where a big bomb goes off or a big disaster happens. It's what they called the place the World Trade Center used to be, until they built a new tower on top of it." Ground Zero, Reshmina thought. That was as good a name as any for the pile of rocks she was sitting on. It certainly wasn't a village anymore. "We can help you," Taz said. "Rebuild your village, I mean. We have machines and stuff for this. I don't know how we'd get them in here." "Bomb them back up to the Stone Age," Reshmina said. She went back to work, moving rocks. "That's what one of your people said, right after your Apache destroyed my village." "He shouldn't have said that," Taz said quietly. "And it was an accident. We're paying for everything that was lost." "Yes, I know," Reshmina said. She gestured at the rock pile. "Lost your house and everything in it? Here's 4,724 American dollars. Lose a goat? Our sincere apologies, and here's $106. Lose a daughter? Here's $1,143. Not as much as for a son, of course, because girls are not worth as much in Afghanistan." Taz grimaced at how callous it all sounded, but Reshmina wasn't wrong, and they both knew it. "They'll reward you for saving my life," Taz said. "You and your family. You'll get more money than anyone else." Reshmina sighed. "What will we do with money?" she asked. "We cannot eat it. We cannot milk it. We cannot ride upon it or sleep inside it. There is no place to spend it and nothing to spend it on." Taz opened his mouth as if to say something, but Reshmina went on. "Use the money to bribe our way across the border into Pakistan? For what? To live the rest of our lives in a refugee camp? That's if we're lucky and the Taliban doesn't steal the money from us first." Reshmina picked up a rock and threw it away. "You Americans think you can fix everything by throwing money at it," she added. "But your friend was right. This is like the Stone Age, because no one will let us get past the Stone Age. Not when there is nothing but war. Do you understand? The best thing you can do to help us is leave us alone. But the Taliban, Taz said, will take over when you go. I know, Reshmina said, but your country helped create the Taliban. You gave them weapons and trained them to drive out the Soviets. We have the old textbooks to prove it. Even when you try to help us, you hurt us. And yourselves, maybe what we need is for you to stop helping us. Taz shook his head. I learned a long time ago that it's not us against the world, Reshmina. It's all of us, together, for each other. Reshmina smiled at Taz. How could he not see it? You can't help us by rebuilding villages and destroying them at the same time. Look at you, she said. You can't even help me with both hands right now because your gun keeps getting in the way. She caught Taz pushing his rifle up onto his back again with one hand while he tried to pick up a rock with the other. He froze, realizing what he was doing, and his face went red. Carefully, deliberately, he took off his rifle and set it to one side, then picked up the rock with both hands and chucked it away. He held out his arms, palms up, as if to say, Look, see? I can help with both hands. Reshmina smiled ruefully. You may be able to do that, she told him, but your country never will. They help with one hand and hold a gun in the other. It was Taz's turn to sit down and rest. He studied his dirty hands as he rubbed the rock dust from them. When the towers came down, everybody pulled together, he said, as if deep in memory. Not just Americans, but people all over the world. There was this feeling of unity. America invaded Afghanistan with a coalition of countries. But then we turned around and invaded Iraq when we still hadn't captured bin Laden or stopped al-Qaeda. By 2010, we still hadn't caught the people who planned the World Trade Center attacks. That's when I joined the Army. I was 18 and I wanted revenge. Reshmina nodded. She understood revenge. We got bin Laden a year after that, but the mission wasn't over, Taz went on. Now it was just this war on terror. I thought I was fighting the good fight, making sure what happened to me and my dad all those years ago never happened to anybody else. But now I'm not so sure what I'm doing. Who are we fighting? How do we know we've won? Taz picked up a small rock and threw it. You know, he said, on 9/11, after everything happened, I remembered wondering, why does somebody hate us that bad? We're the good guys, you know? Reshmina put down the rock she was picking up and looked at him through narrowed eyes. The good guys? Taz put his hands up in surrender. I know. But that's what I mean. After 9/11, everybody said al-Qaeda attacked us because they hated our way of life, our freedom. But I've been over here 10 years, and I've never heard one single person, Taliban or otherwise, talking about how much they hate America's freedom, or Starbucks coffee, or free elections. You and your family didn't even recognize the picture of New York. Taz shook his head. In America, we think everybody in the world cares about everything we say and do. But the only thing people here care about is what we say and do over here. He looked out at what was left of her village. My dad once told me a bully is somebody who does whatever they want and never gets in trouble for it. Maybe that's what we are. Maybe we're the bullies. Reshmina watched Taz for a long moment. Your country may be, she said at last, but you are not. Thanks, said Taz. Maybe it's time for me to think about leaving the army. He smiled. I want to be able to help with both hands. Another soldier called up the hill. It was almost dark, and the Americans were headed back to their base. Taz stood. Listen, the Army's got this interpreter program. If you work for the U.S. Army here in Afghanistan as a translator, you get special permission to come to America when you're done. Go to an American university. Maybe become a U.S. citizen. I don't know all the details, but I could find out. Recommend you for the program when you're old enough. Your English is great. You'd be a natural at it, like the lady you met this morning. The lady who is dead, said Reshmina. Yeah, said Taz. He lowered his head, no doubt thinking about Miriam and everyone else who had died that morning. It's not easy, Taz told her, but then nothing really worth it ever is. Reshmina nodded. Just the thought of going to the United States to study at one of their schools gave her goosebumps. But to do it, Reshmina would have to ally herself with the people who had killed her sister, destroyed her village. Thank you, but no, Reshmina said. She would keep going to school, keep learning English, perhaps move to college when she was old enough. Maybe even find a way to go to the U.S. or Canada or Australia to study. But it would be on her own terms. Well, if you change your mind, let me know, Taz said. No matter what, I'll come back and help. I promise. Thank you for the warning, Reshmina told him. Taz smiled at her joke. I deserve that, he admitted. He unhooked the strange stuffed devil from his vest and gave it to Reshmina. Here, Taz said. This brought me luck once. Of a kind. Maybe it'll bring luck to you, too. Reshmina took the dusty, ratty thing. It wasn't much to look at, and it wouldn't serve her any real purpose, but she knew how important it was to Taz. Thank you, Reshmina said. She bowed her head to Taz, then remembered how she'd been taught to say goodbye from her English lessons. I will friend you on Facebook, she told him. Taz laughed and said his thanks and goodbyes to Reshmina's father. When Taz was gone, Reshmina helped her father stand up. They'd done enough work for now, and it was time to join the rest of the family in the valley. They started walking, but Baba was slow. The steps had always been hard for him, and now even those were gone, buried under a village worth of wood and stone. Is there any other way down? Baba asked. Reshmina scanned the hillside. The sun had almost set. On a ridge across the valley, silhouetted against the orange-yellow sky, Reshmina spotted the lone figure of a boy. He was so far away she could never see his face, but Reshmina knew instantly who it was. Passoon. She would know her brother anywhere. So he wasn't dead, and he had come back to check on them. Why? To make sure they were all right? Or to gloat over firing another shot at the American hornet's nest? Despite everything that had happened, everything Passoon had done, Reshmina's heart still ached at the sight of him. He was her twin, after all. A piece of her would always be missing when they were apart, but apart they would always be, as long as Passoon chose revenge. Passoon raised a hand to wave to her, but Reshmina turned away. Come, Baba, Reshmina told her father. I've found another path.